My hands froze on the patient chart I'd been clutching when Dad, the head doctor and owner of Brooks Family Clinic, slammed his fist on the conference table, his face red like he'd just run a sprint. 5 minutes to clear your station, he barked, his gold watch glinting as he pointed at me like I was some intern who'd spilled coffee on his charts. The room, packed with 30 staff, nurses, techs, billing folks, went dead silent, the kind of quiet where you hear your own heartbeat. I didn't cry or yell. I just smiled, said, "Thank you," and started packing 6 years of my life into a flimsy cardboard box. Then one by one, 15 of my colleagues stood, chair scraping, bag zipping, and followed me toward the door. Kendra, Dad's shiny new office manager, smirked like she'd just aced a final, but Elena from billing whispered to Dad, her voice tight, "You need to call legal, right now." The air in the conference room smelled like stale coffee and antiseptic, the kind that clings to your scrubs after a double shift. Dad's voice cut through again. 4 minutes, 30 seconds. Like he was timing a race he'd already won. His eyes, usually warm when he played the proud dad at fundraisers, were cold, locked on me like I was a liability to be cut. I slid my stethoscope, the one I'd bought with my first paycheck, into the box, next to the flash drive with every community outreach protocol I'd built from scratch. My fingers brushed the framed photo from our last team potluck, where we'd laughed over burned hot dogs after vaccinating 200 kids for free. Kendra leaned back in her swivel chair, twirling a pen, her highlighted hair catching the fluorescent light like she was posing for a corporate headshot. She thought she'd played her cards right, that she'd won. Jamal, our lead medical assistant, was the first to move. His backpack was already slung over one shoulder, like he'd known this was coming. He didn't look at Dad, just at me, his nod quick but solid, like we were still in the ER triaging a crisis together. Then Lila, the scheduling wizard, stood, her phone buzzing with an apology text to her girlfriend for missing date night again. Marcus followed, then Sophia, the Rivera twins, each rising like a wave you can't stop. The room's silence cracked, replaced by the shuffle of feet and the clatter of a dropped pen. Dad's countdown faltered. 4 minutes. But his voice had lost its edge, like he was starting to feel the ground shift. I kept packing, slow and deliberate, like I was charting a patient's vitals. My heart pounded, but my hands stayed steady. Grandma's old nursing trick. When they push, you plant your feet. She'd bandaged soldiers in Nam, raised 4 kids solo, and never let anyone see her sweat. I could feel her strength in my spine as I tucked away the mug with World's Best Nurse, faded from too many dishwashers. Kendra's smirk flickered, her eyes darting to Dad, who was now staring at the exodus forming behind me. Elena's calculator tapped frantically, her face pale as she crunched numbers only she understood. Probably the cost of losing half the staff in one morning. 3 minutes! Dad tried again, but it sounded like a question. Through the glass door, I saw the clinic freeze. Sophia pausing mid-call, the Riveras gaping at their screens, patients in the waiting room craning their necks. My team wasn't just leaving, they were making a statement, one that would echo beyond these walls. I caught Dad's eye for a split second, and beneath his anger, I saw something new. Uncertainty. He'd banked on breaking me, not on breaking the clinic he'd built. Kendra's pen stopped twirling, her confidence cracking as she realized she wasn't the queen she'd crowned herself. And before we get back to the story, would you be kind enough to give this video a like? You know, every single like means a lot to me. It's the kind of encouragement that keeps me creating and bringing you even better stories tomorrow. 2 minutes. Dad's voice was a ghost now, barely carrying over the sound of zippers and footsteps. I slid the hidden USB drive from under my desk drawer into my pocket, the one with every email, every memo, every proof of the work I'd poured into this place. As I lifted my box, the weight felt like a lifeline, not a loss. Jamal flanked me, Lila's heels clicked behind, and the Rivera twins matched our stride. We weren't just walking out, We were rewriting the script. But how did it come to this? My own father turning a staff meeting into a public execution. That's a story that starts 3 weeks earlier, with a Sunday brunch and a betrayal I never saw coming. The tires of my beat-up Honda crunched against the gravel driveway as I pulled up to Mom and Dad's sprawling suburban Atlanta home, the kind of place that screamed old money with its manicured lawn and wraparound porch. It was 3 weeks before Dad would give me 5 minutes to pack up my life at Brooks Family Clinic, and I was still naive enough to think Sunday brunch was just another family ritual. I stepped out, balancing my peach cobbler, the one I'd spent hours perfecting, with that buttery crumb topping Mom always raved about but never credited me for. Connor, my husband, was already out of the passenger seat, his phone glued to his hand, scrolling through some sports app. "Big day," he muttered, not looking up. "Dad's got something to announce." Inside, the dining room smelled of bacon grease and Mom's lavender diffuser, a mix that always made my stomach churn. The oak table, big enough for a dozen but set for 4, gleamed under the crystal chandelier she'd bought on a whim in Charleston. Dad stood at the head, his mimosa glass raised like he was toasting a boardroom victory. "Another banner month for Brooks Family Clinic," he declared, his voice booming with that polished charm he saved for donors and golf buddies. "We're killing it because I know how to spot talent and put it to work." His hand landed on Connor's shoulder, heavy with approval, like he was knighting him. Connor's grin stretched wide, soaking it up like a kid who'd just hit a home run. I slid into my seat, the same one I'd had since I was 12, next to Mom, who was fussing with her napkin, her rings catching the light like tiny spotlights. Nobody mentioned the Medicaid billing mess I'd fixed at 3 a.m. 2 nights before, hunched over my laptop while Connor snored upstairs. Or the free vaccine drive I'd run for 3 weekends straight, getting kids in our neighborhood protected while Dad was off sinking putts at his country club. My cobbler sat in the center of the table, untouched, like it had just appeared by magic. "You look exhausted, sweetie," Mom said, her voice soft, but laced with that pitying tone she used when she wanted to sound caring without actually digging in. "Maybe cut back on the overtime. You know, self-care matters, especially for women in healthcare." I forced a smile, biting into my eggs Benedict, which were predictably dry. Self-care? I'd been up for 48 hours straight, untangling insurance claims so Mrs. Carter, a single mom from Decatur, could get her kids' asthma meds without losing her rent money. I'd held her hand in the exam room last week, promising we'd find a way, even when Dad's no charity cases policy loomed like a storm cloud. That win didn't make it to the brunch table, though. Never did. I glanced at Connor, hoping for a nod, a hint he'd seen me burning the midnight oil. But he was too busy basking in Dad's glow, his fork hovering over his plate as he nodded along to Dad's spiel about streamlining operations. "Connor's been a rock star with the books," Dad went on, his eyes sliding past me like I was part of the furniture. "He's got a real shot at that operations lead role. Kendra, too. She's picking up the admin side like a pro." My stomach twisted at Kendra's name, the new office manager Dad had me training for months. Kendra, who'd never worked a day past 5 p.m. but somehow got Dad's ear. Connor shifted in his seat, his jaw tightening for a split second before he smoothed it over with a sip of coffee. Was that a flicker of jealousy? Or guilt? I couldn't tell, but it stung, like catching a whiff of smoke before you see the fire. "Pass the juice, hun?" Connor asked, his voice casual, but his eyes stayed on his plate. I slid the pitcher over, my fingers brushing the cold glass, and for a moment, I saw us 2 years ago. Newlyweds laughing over burnt toast in our tiny apartment before Dad pulled him into the family business. Now he was Dad's golden boy, and I was the workhorse nobody noticed until something broke. Mom chimed in, her voice bright but sharp. "You really should wear your hair down more, Riley. It's so severe in that bun. Men notice these things, you know." She smiled, like she was doing me a favor, but it landed like a jab, her way of saying I was failing at something else. I chewed slowly, the eggs sticking in my throat. Mrs. Carter's grateful hug flashed in my mind. her kid breathing easier because I'd fought for her. That was worth more than Mom's etiquette tips or Dad's backslaps for Connor. But sitting there, with the clink of silverware and the weight of their dismissal, I felt the first crack in the foundation I'd built my life on. It wasn't just about being overlooked. It was the slow, sinking realization that my family saw my work, my heart, as a footnote to their success. And as Dad raised his glass again, toasting to the future of Brooks, I couldn't shake the feeling that future didn't include me. The bitter aftertaste of Mom's eggs Benedict lingered as I drove home from that Sunday brunch, the Atlanta skyline fading in my rearview mirror. 2 weeks before Dad would give me 5 minutes to pack up my life at Brooks Family Clinic, I was still trying to shake off the sting of being invisible at my own family's table. The feeling clung to me like the faint antiseptic smell on my scrubs, and it followed me into Monday morning, where the disconnect in my marriage was starting to feel like a diagnosis I couldn't treat. I stood in our Decatur kitchen at 6 a.m., the Keurig hissing as it spit out Connor's coffee, always too bitter, no matter how I tweaked it. He leaned against the counter, scrolling ESPN on his phone, his thumb moving faster than his attention to me. "Big day?" he said, eyes still on the screen. "Dad's meeting with the board about promotions. Says Kendra's been killing it, staying late, nailing the admin stuff." My stomach did a slow flip. Kendra, the office manager I'd been training, who clocked out at 5 p.m. sharp and left her desk looking like a Pinterest board. I stirred my tea, the spoon clinking too loud in the quiet. "She's learning fast," I said, keeping my voice even, though it felt like swallowing glass. "Yeah," Connor replied, finally glancing up, but his eyes slid past me to the clock. "I'm late. Gotta run." He grabbed his mug and was out the door before I could respond, leaving me with the hum of the fridge and a sinking feeling I couldn't name. I thought of Mrs. Carter, the patient I'd helped with her kids' meds, how her gratitude had warmed me more than Connor's distracted good job ever could. Trust was supposed to be the bedrock of a marriage, but ours felt like it was built on quicksand, shifting under the weight of Dad's expectations and Connor's ambition. At the clinic, the day started like any other. The buzz of the badge scanner, the sharp smell of hand sanitizer, the flicker of fluorescent lights as I walked to my station. I was charting follow-ups when Kendra breezed in, her heels clicking like she owned the place, a sleek planner tucked under her arm. "Morning, Riley," she said, all bright and polished, like she'd stepped out of a corporate ad. "Ready to show me the ropes on the billing system?" Dad had insisted I train her, saying she just needed a little guidance to take on more responsibility. So I did, walking her through patient intake protocols, insurance workarounds, and the sliding scale I'd fought to keep for low-income families like Mrs. Carter's. Kendra's pen scratched furiously in her planner as I explained how to handle no-shows on copays. "So, what's the cutoff for waiving fees?" she asked, her tone casual but her eyes sharp, like she was filing away more than just procedures. "We don't have a hard cutoff," I said, clicking through the system to show her. "It's case by case, depends on the patient's situation." She nodded, but her next question came too fast. "And who approves charity care? Just you? Or does Dr. Brooks sign off?" Something in her voice, a little too eager, made my skin prickle, like I'd just caught a fever I didn't know I had. At lunch, I grabbed a sandwich in the break room with Lila, my scheduling guru and closest friend at the clinic. She was picking at her salad, her phone buzzing with texts from her girlfriend about their next date night. "Kendra's asking weird questions," Lila said, keeping her voice low, her eyes flicking to the door. "Caught her yesterday digging through your outreach files when you were in with a patient. Said she was getting familiar. Sketchy, right?" I took a bite, the bread turning to paste in my mouth. "She's just thorough," I said, but doubt crept in like a slow drip. Lila raised an eyebrow, her fork pausing. "Thorough? Or playing you?" I heard her on the phone with your dad, all buddy-buddy, talking about streamlining. Sounded like she's gunning for your spot. I brushed it off, but Lila's words stuck, needling me as I went back to training Kendra that afternoon. She asked about vendor contracts, then pivoted to how I prioritized community clinics, questions that felt less like learning and more like probing for weak spots. I shared anyway, because that's what you do when you're a team player, right? You trust. You teach. You don't assume the person you're training is building a case against you. But as I showed her the charity care log, her pen paused and she said, "You spend a lot of time on these low-margin cases. Doesn't that slow things down?" Her smile was all teeth, and I felt a chill, like I'd just handed her a loaded gun. Later, as I locked my station, I thought about the summer I started at the clinic, fresh out of nursing school, when Dad had called me his secret weapon. I'd believed I was building something with him, something that mattered. Now, watching Kendra's perfect handwriting fill her planner with my workflows, I wondered if trust was just another thing I'd misdiagnosed. Back then, I thought Kendra was just ambitious, maybe a little green. But there was something else. Something personal driving her, like a grudge I couldn't see. I didn't know it yet, but the answer was buried in an old email thread, one that would crack this whole thing wide open. The hum of the clinic's fluorescent lights felt louder than usual as I locked my station that evening. Kendra's sharp questions still echoing in my head like a warning I couldn't quite decipher. It was 1 week before Dad would give me 5 minutes to pack up my life at Brooks Family Clinic, and I was about to walk into a storm nobody saw coming. My phone buzzed at 8:17 p.m., just as I was slipping into my jacket, ready to head home after a 12-hour shift. The screen lit up with Jamal's name, our lead medical assistant, his voice tight and urgent. "Riley, systems down. Total crash. Billing, appointments, patient records, gone. We need you back. Now." I sprinted to my car, the Atlanta night air thick with humidity, my heart racing like I was responding to a code blue. By the time I badged back into Brooks Family Clinic, the place was a ghost town except for the war zone in the break room. Laptops cluttered the table, their screens glowing with error messages. Empty energy drink cans and untouched pizza boxes littered the counter, the greasy smell mixing with the faint tang of antiseptic. Jamal was already there, still in his soccer dad polo from his kids' game, his phone buzzing with texts from his wife. "Power surge fried the servers," he said, not looking up from his screen. 40 gigs of data, poof. 8 hours to fix it before patients show up tomorrow. Lila burst in, her hair a mess, apologizing into her phone. "Babe, I know it's date night. I'll make it up, I swear." She hung up, tossing her bag on a chair, and dove into troubleshooting like her life depended on it. Marcus followed, then Sophia and the Rivera twins, Diego and Mia, who could debug code faster than most people could type. They'd all dropped everything. No questions, no complaints. The break room became our bunker, the clock ticking like a bomb. "This is a nightmare," Marcus muttered, munching cold fries one-handed while typing with the other. "More like a family reunion gone wrong," Sophia shot back, her eyes locked on her laptop. "Except we actually like each other." The crisis wasn't just technical. It was personal. Mrs. Carter, the single mom I'd helped with her kids' asthma meds, had an appointment tomorrow, and her file was part of the corrupted mess. If we didn't recover it, she'd be back to square one, fighting insurance denials without proof of her son's treatment plan. I could still feel her hug from last week, her shaky, "Thank you, Riley," as I'd promised to keep her in the system. Losing her data wasn't just a glitch. It was a betrayal of that promise. My chest tightened as I thought about what this place was supposed to be, a lifeline for people like her. Not a machine that chewed up trust. The first error hit at 10 p.m., a corrupted backup that wiped out half the appointment logs. "Son of a..." Diego caught himself, glancing at me. "We're digging deeper." Mia's fingers flew across her keyboard, her face grim. "This isn't just a surge. Something's off in the access logs." Another error at 11:30 p.m. A failed recovery attempt that scrambled the prescription records. My stomach sank as I pictured Mrs. Carter's kid without his inhaler. The kind of mistake that could land him in the ER. I rallied the team, my voice steady despite the panic clawing at me. "We're not losing this. One step at a time. Jamal, pull the secondary drive. Lila, cross-check the cloud sync." By 1 a.m., we were running on fumes and adrenaline. The third error hit. A firewall glitch blocking our restore. "This is sabotage," Marcus whispered, half joking. But Mia's eyes narrowed. Or incompetence. Someone's been messing with permissions. I didn't want to think about Kendra, not yet, but her pointed questions about the system flashed in my mind. I pushed it aside, focusing on the screen, my fingers trembling as I typed. This wasn't just about saving data. It was about proving we were more than Dad's bottom line, more than Kendra's power grab. It was about the patients who counted on us, the ones Dad forgot when he chased profit. "Got it," Sophia shouted at 3:47 a.m., her voice cutting through the haze. The primary server blinked back online, patient records flickering into view. Mrs. Carter's file popped up, intact. Her son's meds, her payment plan, all there. I exhaled, my shoulders sagging, the weight of the night hitting like a freight train. Jamal clapped my back, his grin tired but real. "You're a beast, Riley. We'd be toast without you." Lila leaned over, her eyes red from staring at screens. "This is why we stay. Not for your dad's bonuses. For this. For us." Her words landed heavy, like a vow. We weren't just co-workers. We were a family forged in crises like this, the kind Dad would never understand. I leaned back in my chair, the plastic creaking, and let myself feel it, the pride of pulling through, the ache of knowing Dad would never see it. My work, my team, kept this place alive, but to him, I was just the daughter who clocked in. As we powered down the laptops, the break room quiet again, I couldn't shake the question. How much longer could I pour my soul into a place that didn't see me? The answer was waiting, closer than I thought, in an email I wasn't meant to see. The break room at Brooks Family Clinic was still, save for the hum of the vending machine. As we powered down our laptops at 4:12 a.m., the patient records finally restored after a brutal night. Mrs. Carter's file was safe, her kids' asthma meds secure, but the weight of that billing crisis clung to me like damp scrubs. Lila's words, "This is why we stay. For us," echoed as I drove home, the Atlanta skyline fading into dawn. It was 6 days before Dad would give me 5 minutes to pack up my life at the clinic, and I was too exhausted to see the betrayal barreling toward me. My phone pinged as I pulled into our Decatur driveway, a notification lighting up the screen. An email from Kendra sent to me by mistake. I sat in my car, engine off, the quiet amplifying the buzz in my head. The subject line read, "Medicaid update for Dr. Brooks," and my thumb hovered over it, a gut feeling screaming caution. I opened it anyway. "Dr. Brooks, as discussed, I finalized the Medicaid backlog cleanup," Kendra wrote, her tone crisp and confident. Patients were thrilled with my efficiency. Riley's been frazzled lately, showing up late, missing details. Time to discuss restructuring her role for someone with fresh eyes. My breath caught, sharp as a needle stick. The Medicaid backlog? That was my all-nighter, my fight to keep families like Mrs. Carter's in the system. Kendra had been at her yoga class, posting selfies while I burned out saving the clinic's ass. I scrolled down, my eyes burning, and there it was, a forwarded thread from 2 months ago, buried in the chain like a landmine. Kendra to Dad. "Heard about Riley's push for more charity cases. Noble, but it's tanking margins. I can optimize if you give me her access." Dad's reply. "Handle it, keep it quiet." My hands shook, the phone screen blurring as the words sank in. This wasn't just ambition. Kendra had been gunning for me from the start, and Dad was in on it. My own father, trading my work for her promises. Like I was a line item to cut. I forwarded the email to my personal account, instinct kicking in like I was charting a critical patient. Document everything, always. Leaning back against the headrest, I closed my eyes, the car's leather seats cold against my skin. I saw flashes of Sunday brunches, Dad's booming toasts to the family business, Mom's pitying glances when I worked late. I'd grown up idolizing Dad's white coat, believing we were building something bigger than profit, a place where people like Mrs. Carter could breathe easier. But that girl, the one who thought trust was a given in family, was crumbling. Loyalty wasn't a two-way street here. It was a one-way ticket to being used. I thought about calling Connor, spilling it all. How his precious Kendra was playing us both, how Dad had signed off on it. But the memory of his distracted big day this morning stopped me cold. Would he even believe me? Or would he brush it off as me being overworked, like Kendra's email claimed? The sting of that doubt hurt worse than the email itself. I'd poured 6 years into the clinic, teaching Kendra every trick I knew, trusting she was part of the team. Now her words stared back at me, a knife dressed up as a performance review. For a moment, I considered staying quiet, letting it slide like I always did, smoothing things over for the sake of peace, for the family, for the patients. But then I saw Grandma's face, her steady hands bandaging my scraped knees as a kid, her voice firm. When they push, you don't fold, you stand. She'd nursed through wars and recessions, never letting anyone make her feel small. I wasn't going to start now. The email was proof, but it was also a spark, one that could burn down the lies they were building. I just didn't know yet how close that fire was to catching. The glow of my phone screen lingered in my mind as I stepped out of my car that Monday morning, Kendra's misdirected email still burning like a fresh wound. 6 days had passed since I'd forwarded it to myself, a quiet act of defiance I wasn't ready to confront yet. Grandma's words, "When they push, you don't fold," kept me moving, but the weight of Dad's betrayal and Kendra's scheming made every step toward Brooks Family Clinic feel like wading through mud. Today was the big staff meeting where I'd present the efficiency gains I'd bled for, 250% better patient throughput, numbers that should have made Dad proud. Instead, the air felt off the second I badged in at 6:45 a.m., like the calm before a storm you can't see but know is coming. The clinic's lobby was quieter than usual, the usual hum of morning chatter replaced by a tense hush. Carla, the receptionist who always had a coffee-fueled quip, avoided my eyes, her fingers fumbling with a stack of intake forms. "Rough night?" I asked, trying to lighten the mood. She glanced up, her smile tight, and mumbled, "Just a lot going on." Her eyes darted to the security desk, where Mike, our guard, was pretending to check his logbook a little too intently. My stomach twisted. Carla never clammed up like this, not even during flu season chaos. Something was wrong, and it wasn't just the stale coffee smell hanging in the air. The elevator ride to the third-floor conference room was silent, the ding at the top sounding like a warning bell. I clutched my tote bag, heavy with my laptop and the presentation I'd stayed up until 2 a.m. polishing. When I walked into the conference room, the vibe hit like a cold front. Kendra was already there, sitting in my usual seat by the whiteboard, her laptop open to spreadsheets I knew by heart. My spreadsheets, the ones with billing projections and charity care stats locked behind passwords she shouldn't have. "Morning, Riley," she said, her voice smooth as glass, her smile just a shade too bright. "Dr. Brooks asked me to review these for the meeting. Hope that's cool?" It wasn't a question, and we both knew it. My pulse quickened, but I kept my face neutral, setting my bag down with a deliberate thud. "How'd you get access?" I asked, keeping my tone light, like I was asking about the weather. Kendra's eyes flickered, a split-second crack in her polished facade, before she shrugged. Dr. Brooks gave me temp admin rights for the transition. That word, transition, landed like a diagnosis I hadn't prepared for. My mind flashed to her email, her restructuring plan, Dad's handle it. This wasn't just her climbing the ladder. It was her shoving me off it. I sat across from her, my fingers brushing the USB drive in my pocket. The one with the email I hadn't decided what to do with yet. The room filled slowly, the staff trickling in like they were walking into a funeral. Elena from billing clutched her tablet like a shield, her knuckles white. Dr. Patel, our legal advisor, fiddled with her pen, her usual calm replaced by a nervous twitch. Even the coffee pot was off, leaving the room smelling of nothing but tension and Kendra's floral perfume. Big day, Kendra said, her voice cutting through the quiet as she scrolled through my data. Lots to cover. Her eyes met mine, a challenge wrapped in a smile, and I felt the air shift, like the moment before a patient crashes. Need a hand setting up? Lila asked, slipping into the seat next to me, her voice low but sharp. She'd been right about Kendra's sketchy questions, and now her eyes were locked on Kendra like a hawk. She's got your files, Lila whispered, barely moving her lips. Saw her with 8 last night, poking around the server. My jaw tightened, but I nodded, booting up my laptop. Let's just get through this, I muttered, though my gut screamed that this was about to get ugly. I launched into my presentation, the projector humming as I clicked to my first slide, a graph showing how we'd slashed wait times by 30%. As you can see, our new intake process has... The door slammed open, the handle smacking the wall like a gunshot. Dad stormed in, his white coat rumpled, his face flushed like he'd skipped his blood pressure meds. He didn't look at me, didn't acknowledge the slide glowing behind me. He just crossed the room in 3 strides, his fist hitting the table so hard Elena's coffee mug tipped, spilling dark liquid across her notes. The room froze, every eye on him, and I knew this was it. Whatever Kendra and Dad had been planning, it was about to hit like a freight train. Dad's fist was still pressed against the conference table, the spilled coffee pooling around Elena's mug like a dark omen. His words hit like a gavel. 5 minutes to clear your station, Riley. The room at Brooks Family Clinic went silent. 30 pairs of eyes locked on me, the air thick with the sting of betrayal. I didn't flinch. I smiled, said, "Thank you," and started packing, my hand steady as I slid my stethoscope into the cardboard box someone had shoved my way. The projector behind me still glowed with my slide. 250% better patient throughput, my life's work reduced to a backdrop for this public execution. Then, a chair scraped. Jamal stood, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his eyes meeting mine with a nod that said everything. One by one, 15 colleagues rose. Lila, Marcus, Sophia, the Rivera twins, their footsteps a quiet rebellion that shook the room. Dad's voice cracked through the hush. 4 minutes, 30 seconds, but it wobbled like he was starting to feel the ground slip. Kendra, perched in my seat, froze mid-smirk, her pen dropping with a clatter that echoed like a gunshot. Her eyes darted to Dad, then to the growing wave of staff standing, their bags zipped, their faces set. Elena from billing whispered frantically to Dad, her calculator idle, her voice low but sharp. "You need to call legal. Now." Dad's face flushed deeper, his gold watch glinting as he gripped the table, but he didn't move. He hadn't expected this. An exodus, my team choosing me over his empire. I packed deliberately, each item a piece of the life I'd built here. Patient charts I'd streamlined, the flash drive with my outreach protocols, the faded world's best nurse mug. My heart pounded, but Grandma's voice steadied me. "When they push, you stand taller." I felt her strength as I tucked away the framed photo from our last potluck, where we'd laughed after vaccinating kids for free. Through the glass door, the clinic was a still life. Sophia paused mid-call, the Riveras staring from their stations, patients in the waiting room craning their necks. Mrs. Carter was there, her son clutching her hand, her eyes wide as she watched us. She gave a small nod, her lips mouthing, "Thank you," like she knew this was bigger than me. 3 minutes, Dad tried, his voice thinner now, almost pleading. Lila's heels clicked as she joined me, her phone buzzing but ignored. Marcus followed, then Sophia, the twins in sync. It wasn't just a walkout, it was a statement, a family forged in late nights and shared battles, standing together when it counted. Kendra's confidence crumbled, her hands fidgeting as she realized she'd miscalculated. Dad's eyes met mine, and for a split second, I saw panic beneath his anger. He'd wanted to break me, not spark a mutiny. As I lifted my box, the weight felt like a shield. 2 minutes, Dad muttered, but the countdown was hollow, drowned by the sound of zippers and footsteps. Mike, the security guard I'd shared donuts with during night shifts, appeared at the door, his face apologetic. "Protocol, Riley," he said softly, stepping aside. Luis, his partner, trailed behind, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. We moved through the hallway, 15 strong, a silent march that felt like victory and loss all at once. Mrs. Carter started clapping from the waiting room, a slow, deliberate rhythm that spread, patients joining in, their hands echoing off the walls like a heartbeat. In the lobby, Carla looked up from her desk, her eyes glassy. "Never seen anything like it," she whispered as we passed. Outside, the midday sun hit like a spotlight, the parking lot glaring under its heat. My phone buzzed in my pocket, then Jamal's, Lila's, a chain reaction of notifications, like the world was already catching wind of what we'd done. We clustered by my car, a ragtag crew blinking against the light, not ready to scatter yet. "This is wild," Lila said, her voice low but fierce. "This is right," Jamal corrected, adjusting his bag. The clinic loomed behind us, its glass facade reflecting our defiance. My phone buzzed again, insistent, a message waiting that would crack this day wide open. The sun beat down on the Brooks family clinic parking lot. My team clustered around my car like survivors after a shipwreck. Mrs. Carter's clap still echoed in my ears, joined by patients in the waiting room, their applause a lifeline after Dad's brutal 5 minutes countdown. My phone kept buzzing, texts, emails, notifications piling up like a storm warning. Jamal's phone pinged too, then Lila's, a ripple of consequences we couldn't yet see. I slid into my Honda, the cardboard box with my stethoscope and mug heavy on the passenger seat, and drove home, the weight of our exodus pressing on my chest. It was the same day Dad fired me, and I was about to face a different kind of reckoning in my own kitchen. I pulled into our Decatur driveway at dusk, the porch light flickering like it knew something I didn't. Inside, the house smelled of Connor's microwaved leftovers, burnt pizza, a faint trace of his cologne. He was on the couch, tie loosened, scrolling his phone, the TV droning some sports recap he wasn't watching. "You're late," he said, not looking up, his voice flat like he was reading a script. "Heard you made a scene at the clinic." My blood ran cold. A scene? I set my box on the counter, the thud louder than I meant, and turned to him. "Dad fired me, Connor, in front of everyone. That's the scene." He finally looked up, his jaw tight, but his eyes slid away, guilty. "Dad said you were slacking, letting charity cases clog the system. Kendra backed him up, said you were dropping the ball." My hands clenched, nails digging into my palms. Kendra's email flashed in my mind, her lies about my work, Dad's handle it reply. I pulled my phone from my pocket, opened the forwarded email, and slid it across the counter. "Read this," I said, my voice steady but sharp like a scalpel. Kendra took credit for my Medicaid fix. Dad signed off on pushing me out. "This wasn't about slacking. It was a setup." Connor's face changed as he scrolled, his thumbs slowing like he was piecing together a puzzle he didn't want to see. I I heard them talking last week, he admitted, his voice low, almost a whisper. Kendra pitched streamlining, said you were stretched too thin. I thought she meant helping you, not... He stopped, rubbing his neck, the way he did when he knew he'd screwed up. My heart sank, not just from the betrayal, but from the fact he'd known something and said nothing. You thought? I snapped, the words spilling out before I could stop them. You're my husband, Connor. You saw me killing myself for that place, and you let them paint me as the problem? He stood, pacing like a caged animal, his hands raking through his hair. I didn't know it was this bad, Riley. I thought Dad was just venting, not planning to... He gestured at my box, the mug and photo sticking out like relics of a life we'd lost. You think I wanted this? I'm stuck in the middle, trying to keep the peace. His voice cracked, but it didn't soften me. Peace? I shot back. You kept the peace by letting them stab me in the back. You picked Dad's side over mine. The air between us crackled, years of small slights. His distracted nods, his blind faith in Dad, boiling over into this moment. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Just a heavy silence that felt like the end of something. I need to think, he muttered, grabbing his keys and heading for the door. Don't wait up. The door slammed, the sound echoing like Dad's fist on the conference table. I stood there, alone in the kitchen, the email still open on my phone, its words a cold confirmation of everything I'd feared. Trust was supposed to be the heartbeat of a marriage, but ours was flatlining, and I wasn't sure I could resuscitate it. My phone buzzed again, snapping me out of the haze. Dr. Waugh. Patel's name flashed on the screen, her voice clipped but warm when I answered. Riley, it's Nisha. I just got off with legal. The walkout's got the board spooked, half the staff leaving with you is a PR nightmare. They're offering a contract to keep you quiet. You in? I glanced at the box, my stethoscope glinting under the kitchen light. Lila's text popped up next. We've got your back. Say the word. My team, my chosen family, was still fighting for me, even now. But as I stared at Connor's empty spot on the couch, another call was coming, one that would change the game entirely. The kitchen clock ticked past 10 p.m., its sound sharp against the silence left by Connor's slammed door, and Dr. Patel's call about the board's hush money contract. My cardboard box from Brooks Family Clinic sat on the counter, the world's best nurse mug, a mocking reminder of the day I was fired. Lila's text, "We've got your back," glowed on my phone, a lifeline from my team, but the sting of Connor's half-hearted, "I need to think," cut deeper than Dad's betrayal. I was still staring at the email from Kendra, proof of her and Dad's scheme, when the doorbell rang, sharp and unexpected. Through the peephole, I saw Mom, her silver hair catching the porch light, clutching a worn manila folder like it was her last bargaining chip. I opened the door, the cool Atlanta night air slipping in with her. Riley, she said, her voice softer than I'd heard in years. None of the usual polished edge she used at Sunday brunches. Her eyes, red-rimmed, flicked to the box on the counter. I heard what happened. I should have come sooner. She stepped inside, setting the folder on the table with a care that felt out of character, like she was handling something fragile. The kitchen smelled faintly of Connor's burnt pizza, but Mom's lavender perfume overpowered it. A scent that dragged me back to childhood, her fussing over my ponytail before church, never quite satisfied. She sat, her rings clinking against the table as she pushed the folder toward me. This is about your dad, she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. He's done this before. My stomach twisted, but I opened the folder, its contents spilling out like a confession. Old emails, performance reviews, termination notices, all stamped with the Brooks Family Clinic logo. One name jumped out, Dr. Emily Hargrove, a pediatrician who'd vanished from the clinic when I was still in nursing school. Emily was like you. Mom said, her hands trembling. She pushed for free clinics, fought for patients. Your dad called her unfocused, said she cost too much, fired her in front of the staff, just like you. I let it happen. I stared at the papers, Emily's glowing reviews marked up with Dad's red pen. Inefficient. Overcommitted. It was my story, written a decade ago. My throat tightened as I pictured her. A woman I barely remembered, whose work I'd unknowingly carried on. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. Mom's eyes dropped to her hands. I thought he'd change. I thought, if I kept the family together, he'd see you, really see you. Her voice broke, and for the first time, I saw her not as the polished wife of Dr. Brooks, but as a woman who'd spent years swallowing her own regrets. She reached across the table, her hand cold on mine, and I flinched, memories flooding back, her self-care jabs at brunch, her silence when Dad praised Connor over me. But now, her grip tightened, like she was afraid I'd slip away. I was wrong, Riley. I should have stood up for you, like you did for those patients, for your team. Her words hit like a pulse, steady but raw, and I felt the ache of all the times I'd wanted her to say them. I thought of Grandma, her fierce, stand taller mantra, and wondered if Mom had ever heard it too, but chosen to stay small. Then she slid another paper from the folder, her fingers hesitant. There's something else, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Your dad. He's been hiding losses. Took loans to keep the clinic afloat, leaned on Kendra to cover it up. That's why she's pushing so hard. She's protecting his secrets, not just her own. My breath caught, the room tilting. Dad, the untouchable Dr. Brooks, was drowning in debt? Kendra's email made sense now. Her streamlining was a smokescreen, and I was the scapegoat to keep it buried. Mom's eyes met mine, glassy but resolute. I'm leaving him, Riley. I can't do this anymore. She stood, pulling me into a hug, her lavender scent wrapping around me like a memory I wasn't ready to let go. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice muffled against my shoulder. She left the folder on the table, its weight heavier than my box of clinic relics. As her car pulled away, I sat, staring at Emily Hargrove's termination letter, my fingers tracing her name. The pattern was clear. Dad didn't just fire me. He erased anyone who dared to care too much. But as my phone buzzed again, a new message waiting, I knew this wasn't the end. It was the start of something he'd never see coming. Mom's taillights faded into the Atlanta night, leaving me alone in the kitchen with her manila folder. Its contents, termination letters, proof of Dad's hidden loans, Kendra's cover-up, sprawled across the table like a map of betrayal. My phone buzzed again, insistent, as if the world knew I was teetering on the edge of something big. It was 3 days after Dad fired me from Brooks Family Clinic, and I was still reeling from Mom's confession about his pattern of cutting out anyone who cared too much. I picked up the phone, expecting another text from Lila or Jamal, but it was Dr. Nisha Patel, her voice sharp with urgency. Riley, it's bad. Kendra's crashed the database again, this time on purpose. You need to hear this. I sank into a chair, the kitchen's dim light casting shadows over Emily Hargrove's old termination letter. What happened? I asked, my voice steady but my pulse racing. Nisha didn't sugarcoat it. Kendra was caught deleting patient records, hundreds of them, including your charity cases. It traced it to her login late last night. Looks like she was covering up billing discrepancies tied to your dad's loans. My mind flashed to Mrs. Carter, her kids' asthma meds tied to those records, and my stomach churned. Damage? I asked, gripping the phone. We're talking thousands of dollars in lost claims, Nisha said. Maybe a dozen patients already calling, furious. Mrs. Carter included. She's threatening to go public. I closed my eyes, picturing Mrs. Carter's face. Her gratitude when I'd secured her son's meds, now replaced by panic over a vanished file. The fallout was piling up like a wreck. First, the walkout of half the staff with me. Now this. My phone pinged mid-call, a voicemail from Mrs. Carter herself. "Riley, they're saying my boy's records are gone." Her voice cracked through the speaker. "I can't start over with insurance." "What's going on?" Her words hit like a punch, each one a reminder of the trust I'd fought to build, now shredded by Kendra's sabotage. Nisha kept talking, her voice tight. "Your dad's in damage control, but he's spinning it. Says it's a glitch, not Kendra's fault. He's trying to pin the chaos on staff turnover, meaning you." I laughed, bitter and sharp, the sound foreign in my own kitchen. Of course he'd twist it. Dad, the untouchable Dr. Brooks, was doubling down, protecting Kendra to save his own skin. I thought of Mom's folder, the proof of his loans and past firings, and my fingers itched to do something, anything, to make him face the truth. "He's meeting with the board tomorrow," Nisha added. "Kendra's still in her office, acting like nothing happened. They're planning to resolve this quietly." Quietly. The word burned. They thought they could sweep this under the rug, like they'd swept out Emily Hargrove, like they'd tried to erase me. I stood, pacing the kitchen, the linoleum cold under my socks. Justice wasn't just about me anymore. It was about Mrs. Carter, her kid, every patient caught in Dad's mess. I'd spent years at the clinic, not for his approval, but for them, for the nights we'd pulled together to save records, to keep families whole. Kendra's stunt wasn't just a betrayal of me. It was a betrayal of everyone we served. For a moment, it seemed like the board might act. Nisha said they were considering suspending Kendra, a slap on the wrist to calm the storm. But then she dropped the twist. "One of the board members, a buddy of your dad's, is pushing to reinstate her with a raise. Says she's essential for recovery." My jaw clenched, the folder's papers crinkling under my hand. Essential? Kendra, who'd deleted records to hide Dad's debts, was being shielded while I'd been thrown out. It was a sick kind of justice, the kind that rewarded lies and punished loyalty. I hung up with Nisha, my mind racing. Grandma's voice echoed. "When they push, you stand." But standing wasn't enough anymore. This was a fight, and I had the email, the folder, my team. Mrs. Carter's voicemail played again in my head, her fear fueling something new in me. Not just anger, but purpose. As I stared at the papers, my phone buzzed once more. A new message lighting up the screen, one that would tip the scales and set the stage for what came next. The buzz of my phone cut through the quiet of my Decatur kitchen, where Mom's manila folder still lay open, its papers detailing Dad's loans and Kendra's sabotage staring up at me like a dare. Mrs. Carter's desperate voicemail echoed in my head, her son's asthma records lost in Kendra's database purge. It was a week after Dad fired me from Brooks Family Clinic, and Dr. Patel's call about the board's plan to reinstate Kendra with a raise had lit a fire under me. Justice wasn't coming from them. It was up to me. I swiped to the new message. "Lila, my scheduling wizard, with a single line. Meet us at your place. We're starting over." My living room was about to become ground zero for something bigger than revenge. By 9 p.m., my living room was a makeshift war room, coffee mugs and laptops scattered across the coffee table, the air thick with the smell of takeout Thai and determination. Jamal sprawled on the couch, his soccer dad polo swapped for a faded Hawks tee, scribbling a business plan on a legal pad. Lila sat cross-legged on the floor, her phone buzzing with texts from her girlfriend, but her focus razor-sharp on a spreadsheet. Marcus, Sophia, and the Rivera twins, Diego and Mia, crowded around my dining table, their voices overlapping as we brainstormed a name for our new clinic. "Hope Haven," Sophia suggested, her pen tapping. "It's what we gave people, right?" I nodded, feeling the weight of Mrs. Carter's hug, the patience we'd fought for. Hope Haven it was. The doorbell rang, and Elena from billing slipped in, her arms full of folders and a nervous grin. I'm in, she said, dropping a stack of financial projections on the table. And I've got funding. My jaw dropped as she explained. Her uncle, a retired surgeon with deep pockets, had heard about our walkout and wanted to back us. 200 grand to start, she said, her voice steady despite the bombshell. He trusts you, Riley. Says you're the real deal. The room erupted in cheers, Jamal high-fiving Marcus, but my mind snagged on a memory. Dr. Hargrove, the pediatrician Dad fired years ago, whose name was in Mom's folder. Elena's uncle had mentioned her once, said they'd been colleagues. Was this his way of settling an old score? I didn't ask, but the coincidence felt like fate. We divvied up tasks like we were back in the clinic's break room, fighting a billing crisis. Lila called patients, starting with Mrs. Carter, promising we'd rebuild their records at Hope Haven. Diego and Mia worked on a website, their laptops glowing as they coded a booking system from scratch. I was drafting a press release when my phone pinged. A message from Dr. Emily Hargrove herself, out of the blue. Heard you're starting over, she wrote. I've got a bone to pick with your dad. Coffee tomorrow? My heart raced. Hargrove, the ghost from Mom's folder, wasn't just a name anymore. She was a potential ally, someone who'd faced Dad's playbook and survived. But not everyone was on board. Marcus leaned back, rubbing his eyes. This is nuts, Riley. We're betting everything. Savings, reputations. What if we crash and burn? His words hung heavy, the room quieting as doubt crept in. I stood, my voice firm but warm, like I was rallying them for a late-night shift. We've already pulled through worse. Remember the billing crash? We didn't quit then, and we're not quitting now. This isn't just about us. It's about Mrs. Carter, her kid, every patient Dad's system failed. Lila nodded, her eyes fierce. We're family, she said. Not Brooks' family, our family. The tension broke, replaced by a shared resolve, the kind that had carried us through that all-nighter. By midnight, we had a plan. Hope Haven would open in a leased space downtown, with Elena's funding covering the first 6 months. Lila reported that 30 patients, including Mrs. Carter, had already pledged to follow us, their trust, a lifeline. Meanwhile, Brooks' family clinic was bleeding. Ex-posts from local forums showed canceled appointments and plummeting reviews, their stock ticker dipping 15% in a day. Dad's empire was cracking, and Kendra's essential status wasn't saving it. As we packed up, Jamal clapped my shoulder. You're the heart of this, Riley. Always were. I smiled, but my mind was on Hargrove's message, a ticking clock promising answers, or a fight I wasn't fully prepared for. The glow of laptop screens and the smell of Thai takeout lingered in my Decatur living room, where my team, Jamal, Lila, Marcus, Sophia, the Rivera twins, and Elena, had just named our new clinic Hope Haven. Dr. Emily Hargrove's cryptic message about meeting for coffee sat unanswered on my phone, a ticking promise of answers about Dad's past. It was 2 weeks since he fired me from Brooks' family clinic, and the buzz of our startup plans was drowned out by a new text from Lila. Check X. It's blowing up. I opened the app to see had Brooks' clinic failed trending, with patients like Mrs. Carter posting about lost records and canceled appointments. Hope Haven was gaining traction, but the real fight was about to hit the public stage. The next morning, downtown Atlanta buzzed as I stood at a podium in a rented conference room, my team flanking me, the air sharp with the scent of fresh paint from our new clinic space. Cameras flashed, local reporters scribbling as I laid out Hope Haven's mission: affordable care, no patient left behind. Across town, Dad was holding his own press conference, spinning Kendra's database sabotage as a technical glitch and promising restructuring. My phone streamed his feed in my pocket, his voice smooth but strained, claiming Brooks' family clinic was stronger than ever. The ex-post told a different story. Patients defecting, stock tanking 20% overnight. Our press conference was a knockout. Mrs. Carter stood beside me, her son clutching her hand, thanking us for rebuilding her records. The crowd clapped, and I felt the weight of their trust, heavier and truer than Dad's gold watch. Back at home that evening, my phone rang, Kendra's name flashing like a warning. I answered, bracing myself. "Riley?" she said, her voice stripped of its usual polish. "I'm out. Your dad's stepping down. The board's done." My heart skipped. She was rattled, her words rushed. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was just following orders. I gripped the phone, her excuse as flimsy as the cardboard box I'd packed my clinic life into. "You deleted patient records, Kendra," I said, my voice cold. "Mrs. Carter's kid could have ended up in the ER. Save your apologies." She hung up, but the victory felt hollow. Dad's resignation wasn't justice yet, just a crack in his armor. An hour later, Dr. Patel called, her tone brisk. "The board's offering a settlement, full ownership of your charity protocols, no strings, and a public apology. They want this quiet." She paused, then added, "We've got security footage, Kendra wiping the database, your dad signing off on her access. It's damning." I sat at my kitchen table, Mom's manila folder still open, Emily Hargrove's termination letter staring up. The footage was a trump card, but I wasn't signing anything yet. "Send it to me," I said, "and tell the board we're not done talking." That night, Mom called, her voice shaky but firm. "I filed for divorce, Riley. Your dad's lies, his loans. It's over." I froze, picturing her lavender perfume, her trembling hands when she'd left the folder. "I'm proud of you," she said, a first that hit like a lifeline. "You're not just my daughter. You're the legacy I should have fought for." Her words cracked something open, not just pain, but pride. I wasn't carrying Dad's name anymore. I was building my own, with Hope Haven, with my team. But there was a twist I hadn't seen coming. Mom revealed Dad had tried to sell the clinic years ago, to a chain that would have gutted its soul. Emily Hargrove had stopped it, and he'd fired her for it. Now, I was finishing her fight. As I hung up, Lila texted a screenshot. Hope Haven's website had 500 signups, patients jumping ship from Brooks. My team, my chosen family, had turned a walkout into a movement. I thought of Grandma, her stand taller mantra, and realized this was it. Not just revenge, but justice for every patient, every nurse, every dream Dad had crushed. My phone buzzed again, a new message hinting at the next chapter, one where Hope Haven would face its own battles. If this moved you, like, comment, and share, then subscribe and watch the next story on our channel.